Hello and welcome to Grow Conversations, your window into the world of medical cannabis here in the United Kingdom. On this week's episode, we have Cameron Clarke. Cameron is CEO of Sunderstorm and the Kanha brand underneath that. Cameron, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Brilliant. So there'll be many people watching who will know the brands that I just mentioned very, very well. But if you can give us a brief introduction to those, just to get us started, and then we'll go way back in time and we can talk about how you've ended up where you are today, if that's all right with you.
Yeah. So Kanha is an OG California brand. The company Sunderstorm started in 2015. We launched the Kanha brand in 2016 here in California, specifically in Los Angeles. We came out of the gate. We produced gummies, vapes, and sublinguals back in the day. We were also the very first company to do nanotechnology or fast-acting technology in 2015, 2016, long before anybody knew what that was. So we started our career in California. It was very, very competitive market. It was before it was basically a gray market back in those days, and it was before full legalization, which was in 2018. So the first few years were a little crazy and rough back in the day, but we grew, and by 2019 timeframe, we were one of the top brands in all of California, mostly due to our edibles. We're mostly known for our gummies. And we embarked on an expansion strategy where we expanded out to multiple states in the U.S. And we did so doing all of our own manufacturing. We are very, very keen to do our own manufacturing of our edible products, and that's been important for us. Quality has been very important for us. And then about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we embarked on a plan to open up in Thailand. And so we've been operating in Thailand for about the last 2 years or so, fully operational in that market. We're excited that a lot of tourists come in from all over the world and they get to enjoy our products in the Thailand market, and then go home and talk to their friends about them. So Thailand's been really a great market for us, and great for the industry because it makes cannabis fully accessible, which I know the Europeans are excited about. That it's becoming more and more accessible every day, and we want to help drive that. I do absolutely appreciate the fact that Europeans are absolutely focused on medical, or the global markets are focused on primarily on medical products and medical. We do see ourselves as a wellness brand, wellness company, helping people live better lives. We want to lead people to better lives. That's our mission, using plant medicine products. I'm happy to go through the story. So we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year, and now we're embarking on our second decade. So very excited to launch our products in the European market.
I was hoping you might end on that point, and we are launching the Kanha brand in the UK very, very shortly. In fact, I think we have had a few of the products land. Might even be at the moment where we're launching this episode. Let's take it back a little bit more than even the 10 years of the brand and Sunderstorm's existence. I'd like to learn a little bit more about you and your journey into the cannabis industry, because I know, read a few of the other interviews you've done in the past, it wasn't exactly a typical journey into this space.
Yeah. I'm kind of a plant medicine fiend, I guess is how I put it. Many moons ago, I became very interested in health and wellness and nutrition. And when I was doing my studies on nutrition, I came across the value of the healing power of plants and the value of plant medicines and all of that. And I embarked on a very interesting journey, through my 30s and 40s, into the world of plant medicines and healing plants, and spent a lot of time down in the Amazon doing interesting plant medicines, Africa, traveled all over the world, learned a lot about these substances and their healing properties. And then I also have a science background. I also embarked on, about 12 or 13 years ago, I embarked on self-study, molecular biology, and I was working with algae and other plants to be able to produce high value compounds. And I really love the concept of blending the best of Mother Nature with the best of mankind, and really creating products that are safe and tested and reliable and consistent for consumers. that lead them to live better lives. And so around the 2014 timeframe, cannabis had just been legalized in Colorado. Oregon obviously was moving forward. Washington, California, then slowly followed suit. And I called an old friend of mine from Stanford, and I said, "Hey, you've been smoking cannabis your entire life. Why are we not in the cannabis industry? We both love plant medicines, and we both believe in the power of plants. Let's get in the industry, and let's use all of our skills that we've built over the years, we've acquired over the years, and let's build a company that really makes amazing products that lead people to, like I said, to lead better lives." And so in 2015, we opened our doors in California, and then in 2018, obviously things went legal, and everything just blew up from there, where we're now one of the top brands in the U.S. So and moving towards a true global brand.
There's so many parts of what you said there I'd love to dig into. I'm going to have to, because I'm very curious to understand what plant medicine studies look like in the Amazon and in Africa, and what your sort of experiences were like there. And I guess if it makes sense to sort of link that back into cannabis, what did you learn there that you've taken to the cannabis industry? And then we'll talk more about the science and the tech side of things as well. I think.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting, right? Because I really feel like my life's journey has led me to what we're doing today. My life's journey has been, the aspect of plant medicines that I talked about, and doing these experiences in the Amazon and West Africa and elsewhere, blah blah blah. But also, I have a science and engineering background, and I did self-study for molecular biology. So, and then I have an entrepreneurial business background where I was doing software, and I had a CPG company with I was one of the first companies to import the acai berry from Brazil back in 2003 timeframe. And so, I also have, experience in commercializing the acai plant. And so all those things kind of led together for us, to launch Sunderstorm and the Kanha brand. But specifically for plant medicines, I have spent a lot of time down in the Amazon. I've done, ayahuasca plenty of times. I'm a passionate consumer. It's been quite a while since I've consumed it, but I will probably go back to it at some point here. But also in West Africa, I've experienced, an iboga experience, which was really incredible and mind blowing, and one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And when cannabis started to be legalized, I really felt like all of my experience and my passion for plant medicines, really, I could actually drive into the cannabis industry. And I feel like the door was open to me, and I said, you know what, I'm going to walk through that door, because my passion for this stuff and my understanding of cannabis, and I had some experience in consuming cannabis over the years, of course. I just wanted to help the world get access to this incredible plant medicine and its healing power. And I'll tell you, even before I knew about the power of cannabis, right? But not until like a year or a year and a half into it did I really begin to understand how cannabis was helping so many people around the planet. For decades, hundreds of years, millennia, right? And that has been, one of the most exciting things for me is to see how our products have really helped so many people on their wellness journeys around the globe. I will add one more thing. In my own personal experience and my own personal understanding, I really don't differentiate too much between recreational and medical cannabis, because you can wake up in the morning and you can take a gummy because you have a little bit of back pain and you want to be able to relieve that pain. But then at night, you can go out and go to a concert with your friends, and you can smoke a joint all together, and you can have a great time at the concert. Those are both wellness, right? Being in your community, socializing, being with your group of friends, that's all wellness. We all know that we have to socialize. We're social beings, and that is all part of our wellness. And we're learning a lot about that in the longevity community these days. Like that socialization is important. And cannabis has been at the heart of this kind of plant medicine socialization, even more than other plant medicines. And I love that about it.
it really sits in the middle of those two sort of dichotomies, doesn't it? And I think, I mean, here in the UK, we certainly have quite a clear distinction, mainly because obviously recreational, completely illegal. We have now a legal medical system, and I think that keeps them very separate in terms of sort of culture and, of course, the legislation, the law itself. But I completely agree with you. I think there is a point in the middle where these things merge. And it's usually because you go to the doctor nowadays here, and maybe it's the same in California, I expect it is, and they'll prescribe, going for a walk or, some physical activity or joining a sports team or something that you might consider to be recreational, but actually that they're prescribing that broader sense of wellness that is life. I mean,
that's totally true. And that's such a great point, because these worlds are merging, right? Western medicine has done a really, poor job of like separating, right? I've done a good job of separating, medicine from our day-to-day lives, which is really not how it's done. If you go to these indigenous cultures around the world and cultures that have been using plant medicines, these plant medicines are fully integrated into their day-to-day lives, right? And I think that's starting to happen now. And in a lot of ways, and with other plant medicines, right, that we can also talk about if you want, but the bottom line is, cannabis is driving all this. And I'm telling you that if we all hadn't around the world driven the legalization of cannabis and the availability and accessibility of cannabis, none of the other plant medicines would be following suit right now. And I think that this is a very exciting time, because cannabis is leading the way, and it's really demonstrating how these medicines can heal and lead people to live better lives. And so that integration is super important for all of us.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've been paying close attention to. There's various clinical studies going on in the UK and further afield in terms of things like psilocybin, things like MDMA, although not a plant medicine, but certainly things that have previously been prohibited, and often plant medicines within that. No, it's fascinating. And to bring in the third pillar, I suppose, at least from my understanding, there's the spirituality as well. I know you were talking about indigenous cultures, how they imbue that into their day-to-day life. There's the medical, the recreational, I suppose the spiritual as well. And I suppose you're right, all of these things blurring. I suppose you probably see that more in places like Los Angeles than you might in other parts of the world. I think it's very progressive in that sense, isn't it? Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Yes, we are known for our progressive attitudes. But I think it's great, right? Because I think that's all part of it too. It's really about the study of consciousness, right? And you just can't tell me that anybody who's taken, whether it's psilocybin or other plant medicines, have not had a very a profound effect on their consciousness and their connection to consciousness, whatever the heck that means, right? And we don't necessarily need to go too far down that path, but those things are part of the healing experience, right? And we're all, whether it's a physical experience for you or whether it's a conscious experience for you, it's all part of it, right? And it is well, I'll just put it this way: the world needs all this right now.
Yeah, that's we won't dig into that phrase, but I think everybody watching will have a fair idea what you mean by that. Bit of connectivity, bit of rebuilding bridges, and
let me make one more point, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, right? You said the UK is it's a medical market. I think the UK has 100 to 120,000 patients today, something like that, a fraction of the overall population, and everybody wants to see this industry grow in the UK. We want to see more patients come into the system. It's early, right? 100 years from now, they're going to look back and they're going to say, that 10 or 20 years that it took for cannabis to come out of the closet and be fully legalized and all that, for 30 years, it was a drop in the bucket. And we're all working hard to drive incredible societal change right now. And it does feel like things go too slowly, right? We want to see them move faster, but it's all happening, right? If it's a 65,000 foot level, whether it's medical or recreational or whatever, like all of this is leading to the adoption of cannabis and plant medicines into our cultures. And that is a beautiful thing.
Beautifully put. I won't. I think we should talk a little bit about Kanha. I won't dwell too far down that route, but I think just talking, obviously with your experience in places like the Amazon, places Africa, I knew there would be a more personal ethos behind that, and I think we dug into that quite nicely there. That's but great to hear your sort of view on these things. But let's talk about Kanha and the sort of success that it's had in California, as we've discussed, which is, possibly one of the most competitive, certainly one of the most sophisticated cannabis markets in the world, possibly the number one, top of the list. How have you survived that? I suppose. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's been intense. It's been really intense, and it's interesting. When I decided to get into the industry, kind of 2014, I made the firm commitment to actually get into the industry. I talked to my business partner Keith, and I said, we can open up. We can go. I'll move anywhere. We can go to Colorado. I'll go to Oregon. Whatever. We looked around. We canvassed the entire market. Other states were starting to get their medical systems. And then we just looked at California. We said, California is by far the most competitive market. It's the biggest market. If we can win here, we can win anywhere. So we just said, let's stick in California. Let's fight the fight here. And let's build a brand that people can trust and is resilient and people care about. And so that's what we did. And yes, it's been a fierce competitive battle. It's trench warfare every single day. But we're changing the world, and we built our brand. We built the Kanha brand by building trust with the consumer, making amazing products, sticking to our quality, never shipping anything that was not appropriate. And that's why we typically do all of our own manufacturing of edible products, because we want to make sure that product is what it's supposed to be, right? So we are very fierce about quality, and so every step of the way through the California market, we have lived to that ethos, and the consumers and it's resonated with consumers. They know that we're trusted and reliable and consistent. And if we make mistakes, we admit to our mistakes, and we move on. And we also have expanded into other states. So now we are one of the largest edible brands in the country. We're definitely in top 10, maybe top 5 edible brand in the U.S. And again, we're trying to expand globally. And obviously, we are expanding into flower. So that's part of this conversation. And really, it's because the global markets are primarily flower markets. And so in order for us to be in the global markets, we have to be a flower brand. And we haven't typically done that much in the U.S. a little bit, but on the global markets, there's a huge opportunity for that, and we're excited to embark on that.
Yeah, how has that been to? I suppose it's a pivot of sorts. It's in addition to what you're already doing. How has that been for a brand? Like I say, you've been very focused on the edible market. One of the biggest in the US. What's that been like to set up as a fairly experienced or long-lived cannabis company to then start from what might feel like a step backwards, I suppose, to go back to the flower?
Yeah.
Or what's that been like for you, I suppose?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, we've had smokables for many years, right? We've been in the vape business for quite some time. We have vapes in multiple markets in the US. So we have been part of the smokable market, but flower is very different. We did just buy a brand in California called Lime, and we are launching their we're now selling their pre-rolls throughout the state of California. So we are in the pre-roll segment here. We will launch those pre-rolls in other states as well. But what happened was when we opened up in Thailand, what I found was, we started making gummies. We're in, all the key dispensaries in Thailand. Our brand is well known in Thailand. But through those relationships and through those experiences, we also connected very closely with some of really amazing cultivators and growers in Thailand. Some have come from the West Coast in the U.S. and some who actually are Thai folks that actually lived in California back in the day and got educated here. And what I found was that because it was basically the doors were blown wide open in Thailand, there were a lot of folks actually moving to Thailand, which is a great place to live during COVID and after COVID, that had a lot of cannabis experience. And so they were influencing the cultivation, and the product within 3 years, the product went from being less than average at best right? To having really excellent quality flower being cultivated in Thailand. And so, I said, you know what? If we're going to get into global markets, we want to establish the channels of trade before we can actually start to export other types of, gummies and other types of products. So if we want to get into global markets, we want to be one of the first brands in the global markets. We have to get in the flower game. And we couldn't export flower from California or the US. I wasn't really interested in exporting Canadian flower. And I looked around in Thailand, and we had these relationships with a few of these cultivators. And I said, guys, let's take your flower and let's start exporting it around the globe. We'll work together in partnership to be able to make sure that the quality is there and be able to give you access to markets that you wouldn't normally have access to. I personally have a big background in international trade. And earlier in my career, I was doing international trade of commodities around the globe. So I understood, what it takes to move products around the globe. So I was very excited to be able to do this. And yes, flour is very different from other types of products for sure. It's, flour can be there's a lot of variability, and it's very tricky to grow, and you got to make sure that the quality is there and all of that. So, we picked partners that we can work very closely with, right? That we trust, and that we feel proud to actually export their flower from Thailand. We tell everybody, California quality grown in Thailand, exported around the world. So that's really what our mantra is.
Perfect. I mean, it is Thai-grown cannabis flower that we are going to be launching very soon here in the UK. We can't go into the specifics about the strains or the details, sadly, for the regulatory reasons here we have here in the UK. But I'd love to hear more about your plans for the UK, and I suppose for other European markets going forward. Not just I know that with the flower, Thai flower is incoming, but what else is on the horizon?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I love the UK market, right? And I didn't really fall in love with the UK market until I really dug into it and started to understand what was happening there. Initially, I was frustrated by the fact that it was so small and felt like it was moving very, very slowly, right? And everybody's been frustrated with that.
Oh, yeah.
But then when I dug into it, I realized that the UK is doing things differently than Germany, right? And there's a little more flexibility in some ways. And the number of patients, the number of consumers was actually growing quite nicely. And the truth is, the UK is very comfortable with cannabis. Cannabis has been part of the UK culture for many, many, many decades, right? Which is very similar to California, right? When the market first started in California, it was also, there was the illicit market, which was massive, and then there was this gray market, which initially was quite small, right? But it took time for new dispensaries to open and to start funneling some of the product through those channels. And what was termed the gray market was kind of our own version of a medical market from basically 1996 to 2018, or 1998 to 2018 timeframe. So almost about 20 years. So I see something, and then when it was legal in California, now you had testing. Now the products were safe. They weren't flooded with pesticides or other types of compounds that are dangerous for people. That was super frustrating for me when I got in this industry. We wanted everything to be organic and safe and tested and reliable, so the consumers, weren't getting poisoned by these products. And so, when you look at these illicit markets around the world, there's a lot of garbage flowing in and out of them. But those consumers are there. Their consumers are there, and they want access to these products. And so I think what I've been seeing in the UK is that through the testing, we're now giving consumers access to good quality products that are safe and reliable and consistent, and that they can trust. And so the goal is the same thing that we did in California and other U.S. markets, is move those, illicit market consumers into the licensed market, or the medical market in the UK, and grow the industry. So I see similar things in the UK that I've seen in other markets, and I do like that. I like the fact that it's growing quickly, and I'm very proud to partner with Grow, and that we can, and Grow is helping us build the Kanha brand in the UK market.
We're likewise very proud to be working with you guys at Kanha. I mean, personally went out to Thailand and have seen what you guys are doing out there, and certainly can attest to how impressive it is. And I'm very, very excited for what is to come. Um, was it important for you guys to be a global brand? Was that part of the conversation, or was it more about being quite selective about the countries that you wanted to go to? Is it a reach all consumers globally? Is that the end goal?
That's a really good question, because I tell people, when I started this company back in, 2015, when we opened our doors, I really didn't imagine, much that we would be able to expand, nationwide in the US,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And for sure, I didn't imagine that we would build a global brand. But, one thing led to another. We became a large US brand, and we have millions of consumers in the US. It's hard to believe it. We really have millions of consumers, which is amazing. And we're so proud to be able to say that. Um, but a few years ago, one of our partners, one of the investors and one of our partners in one of our states came to me, and they're Thai, and they said, "Hey, Thailand's opening up. Do you want to go open up in Thailand?" And I said, "Hell yeah!" Right? Like, it was an opportunity. And when I heard that they blown the doors wide open, I went to Thailand and looked around. I said, "You know what? This is going to be a great opportunity." Thailand has a lot of exporting experience. Thailand they have nutraceutical and pharmaceutical industry, and I said, we can actually build a global brand through Thailand. We had done a little bit in Canada, uh, but we didn't really feel like Canada was, in those days, back in the day, was really pushing so hard for export. But Thailand, I knew, had to push for export. They had built a lot of amazing facilities. They had invested many, many tens of millions of dollars into their infrastructure. There's great infrastructure in Thailand, and a lot of good cannabis experience was now living in Thailand. And so it didn't take me very long to realize that we could start in Thailand, we could build the Thailand market, and then we could begin to export products from Thailand when the time is right. So that's our path, and that's why we're embarking on the flower. Now, having said that, we're also setting up. You need EU GMP for other, for products, and so we're also setting up a facility in North Macedonia right now with another partner, and New Garden Pharma, and I think that's going to be great for us because we'll have full EU GMP for the global markets. It's difficult to get that in Thailand at this time, but you know what? I really didn't think we were going to be able to have access to the global markets, but the more I looked at it, the more I kind of saw what we could do. I just became more comfortable with it and decided to embark on it. And I realized that we could be one of the first truly global brands, and that's exciting for us.
Do you find that the consumers or the patients, depending on what market you're in, do you find they vary massively between nations, or is the sort of cannabis culture sort of the same wherever you go, or is there? Yeah.
It's so interesting because I would have thought that there had been a lot of variability,
Hmm.
but when I run around Thailand and I see these Thai consumers and the tourists that are going there, it feels like California,
Yeah.
right? They care about the same things. They have the same amount of passion. My director of sales in Thailand uh, was in the industry for 2 years in California, so he understands the California industry, back in the day. He and his friends are super passionate consumers, right? And that's been that I see that all throughout the Thai market. And then I go to Europe, right? And I go to Mary Jane, right? And I see at Mary Jane the same types of consumers, right? 60,000 consumers that are all passionate about the culture. And it really leads back to the power of the meaning of the plant itself. Cannabis itself drives that socialization. It drives that culture. And when you work with a variety of OGs in California, the ones that kind of define the culture, um, you do see a lot of that just spreads globally, and people just have a lot of appreciation for it. So, to be honest, I've actually been quite amazed at how consistent this culture is around the globe, and that gives me um, a lot of hope for the future. And it's the same whether someone's using it because they have anxiety or they can't sleep, or or, if they just want to go smoke a joint with their friends out at a concert at night.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel, and I often talk about the power of the plant, and I think people who are new to this don't quite get what I mean. But I say you travel the world, you'll find cannabis consumers pretty much in every country you go to, and there'll be
Yeah.
something that unifies them. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about this plant that I don't know changes your mindset, changes how you feel about things a little bit. Or just I guess an openness. I was going to say like it's a bit contrite as a question for a podcast, but has is it California that's you talk about the OGs and the back in the day of California, and absolutely far be it for me to say that California hasn't led in terms of cannabis culture, but did California define cannabis culture, or did cannabis define Californian culture? What came first? Was like chicken and the egg? There is that. Maybe that's
It's
a too deep a
it's
question.
a it's a good question. I think it's a little of both, to be honest, right?
Mm, mm,
One of the things that's been interesting for me is that, I've had a few conversations recently with Be Real, the singer from Cypress Hill,
oh, I know who you're talking
and
about.
he got to tell me some of his stories about back in the day, and he was working with Josh D, who brought OG Kush from Florida to the San Fernando Valley in LA, which is where I'm sitting right now, right, which has been the heart of LA cannabis culture for decades. And he was really just, he helped drive a lot of that culture. And he was Cypress Hill and Be Real were singing a lot about this,
Oh yeah,
and working hard to spread this culture. So I think they helped spread the word, but cannabis itself, because we have an endogenous endocannabinoid system, and it connects with us in very powerful ways, and it does drive community. So cannabis itself has helped drive the community, and you don't see that necessarily with other types of plant medicines, right? Certainly with ayahuasca, right? You have your experiences, it's very powerful and potent and all of that, but and you do have some community associated with it, but nothing like cannabis globally. And so I think part of it is in the DNA of the plant itself, and part of it is that that there was a certain group of people that really pushed hard to get this out in the world and to sing about it and to or write songs about it and get those songs out into culture. And you got the Rastafarian culture as well, which helped drive a huge part of this. So they've all kind of blended together to create this community, and I think it's compelling because that has helped driven a lot of adoption over the world over the years, and that's great for society.
yeah. I think I was probably aware of cannabis through the lyrics of Cypress Hill and Be Real, probably before I'd ever consumed any cannabis. But maybe that's just timings and the time I grew up. But yeah, hip hop and rap music and leading
A
into
lot,
that,
a
maybe.
lot of people, a lot of
Mm,
people, they were
mhm.
they did a lot to drive this out of the trenches, right? When I came in this industry, I mean, I talk a little about trench warfare. I mean, this industry was full of revolutionaries.
Yeah,
It was full of revolution, what I call Cannabis 1.0, where all the revolutionaries who were fighting this fight to get this plant legal. And they did so much incredible work, and they were so passionate about it. And I'm so proud of their legacy and what they did in those days. And that allowed us to bring it into Cannabis 2.0, which that's what I call it, right? Which is, legalization. And now I think we're into Cannabis 3.0 as it spreads, culturally, and all kinds of new consumers coming to the industry. But, there was this very interesting shift in California back in the day when basically as we were starting, where it went from this kind of revolutionaries fighting this fight
mhm.
to brands coming in and wanting to, brighten it up. And if you look at our brand, right, we specifically, decided we didn't want to be black and green and dark
Yeah,
and aggressive, right? We wanted to be fun and playful and colorful and trustworthy and allow people to really uh, connect with the plant in a different way. And so that's what we built in the Kanha brand,
mhm.
to kind of bring it out of the trenches and more into kind of mainstream culture. So, and we see a lot of brands actually in the West Coast in the U.S. that actually have moved it along that path, and that has been that's been a great thing too. And now we're all kind of working together to keep this moving forward all over the globe.
Do you find there's a tension there between the sort of, I guess, the activists, the revolutionaries, as you describe them, and those who are trying to make this more mainstream? Do you find that there are people who push back against that? I certainly do
Yes.
experience that here in the UK. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. For sure, for sure. You know what? And I think there's been it's been an interesting tension over the years, and I've watched it, and I've tried to like be one of the ones that, works with all the players and try to have everybody, feel comfortable about working together. It's been difficult. This has been a very, very hard fight. And it's sad how difficult this fight has been, since the 70s, to really, really bring this plant into the mainstream.
Mm.
But the good news is we all generally have the same mission. We
Yeah.
all want to see cannabis into as many hands as possible and many mouths as possible, and have everybody enjoy the healing power of the plant. But you did have a lot of folks that said, "Oh, legalization is the worst thing that could ever possibly happen," right? And we need to go back to the old days. But I'm telling you, the old days, the plant was flooded with pesticides. It wasn't tested. And edibles, you had no idea what you were getting. You could be getting 2 milligrams, or you could be getting, 150 milligrams in an edible, and you had no idea. And it was complete Russian roulette. And so, I I came in this industry, we came in this industry who said, we're going to end that. I had a lot of experience in plant medicines before that, and nobody likes an experience that is not predictable. So we wanted to create an experience that consumers could know, they know exactly what it's going to feel like every single time. And that predictability is crucially important. And so that's just part of this drive into modernization. And we've had to drag a few people along kicking and screaming. But either way, I still appreciate the fact of the fight that those people all put forth and the risks that they took. And many of them spent a lot of time in jail to legalize this plant. So we all, my success today is on the backs of those people that fought that fight, and I have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for those for what they've done. And we just need to continue to work together. And it's better today than it has been, but it's been an interesting transition, as you point out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the moving into the future. Perhaps I'd love to understand more about the nanotechnology. I confess it's not a subject I know a huge amount about. I know nano means very small. That's about as far as I've got. It'd be lovely to hear from you exactly how that works with the Kanha brand and the products that you
Yeah.
work.
So one of the things in edibles and with beverages and tinctures and all of that I've known for many, many moons, long before I ever in my own experiences with these plant medicines, is that if you have to wait too long for the experience, it's very easy to overdose,
Yeah.
right? Because especially when you have no idea what's actually in that product, you know, all of us, anybody who's taken an edible has an experience of like, oh, geez, I got a little bit more than I wanted, and you have a bad experience, and
Yeah.
it's not good, right? And so knowing that, I wanted to come in this industry, and I wanted to compress the time from which that you actually ingest to when you actually feel the effect. Because if you feel it quickly, right, then what you do with a a beer or a glass of wine or whatever, you're then like, oh, okay, now I know what the experience is, and then you know when to take a little bit more. But if it waits
Yeah.
you wait too long, you could be in trouble. So from the very beginning, I wanted to figure out ways that we could actually compress that time. So I was looking for technologies early on, which is why we launched with what's called a liposomal nanotechnology that was developed by a mad scientist stoner, right? And he made an incredible technology, and we launched with that back in 2015. And it really was great to actually compress that time. And we made all kinds of products, primarily in tinctures in those days, but then we moved it into edibles. And so the nanotechnology just means that it's very, very small, and it does a couple of things. One, it gets into the bloodstream very quickly. And secondly, if you ingest it, it bypasses the liver. The liver converts delta 9 THC into 11 hydroxy THC, which can create an effect of like heaviness and kind of be longer lasting and have a little bit of for some people maybe a little bit of anxiety. But if you add the nanotechnology, it bypasses the liver. the Delta 9 gets actually straight into the bloodstream. It can go even straight into across the blood-brain barrier because their nanoparticles are so small. And so you actually feel the effect quickly. You get more of it, you get more bioavailability, you get more of it in the bloodstream, and it's more consistent, and the experience is more consistent. So that's why from the very beginning, we've been pushing these nanotechnologies in many of our products. And we have a different nanotechnology that we use today that we've used for the last, I don't know, 6 years or something, which is great for edibles. But it's a similar thing. We've always called it nano, but it's really about fast acting, higher bioavailability, and consistency.
And so the effect, from what it sounds like, you're getting closer to the effect of an inhaled product, but you're not actually having to inhale it, and the risks to the lungs, etc., that would come along with that. Is that right?
Oh, that's correct.
I'd never made the connection there that it was like, so you're bypassing the liver, the blood-brain barrier, and that's obviously what's happening when you're inhaling it. But I'd never made that connection that is actually what your edibles are doing, and therefore it doesn't last as long. Is that also the case? So it's shorter lasting, it's much faster.
That's also the case, right? So it gets into the system quickly, gets out of the system a little bit quicker, which is great for a lot of people, because I always talk about, we call them soccer moms and soccer dads in the US. They got to raise their kids, but you know what? The mom wants to go out and go out with her friends and go have a dinner and have a nice time. So she'll pop one of our nano gummies. And by the time she gets home, 3 hours later, 4 hours later, she's ready to take care of Junior. So it's,
that's the thing, isn't it? So there's two things. I guess the first one is, I think there's a lot of people who are hesitant to inhale cannabis for various reasons. I think you have the stigma around smoke. You also have stigma around vaping now. I don't know what it's like in places like California, but certainly here, vaping is almost seen as harmful as smoking, even though it's not really. But that you have a lot of people, particularly those who might be new to cannabis, like you say, the soccer moms potentially, and I'm sure other demographics besides, who just don't see themselves inhaling anything. But when you present the idea, well, the alternative is you could eat something, but it'll be quite strong, potentially stronger than you expect, or we won't necessarily know how strong it is because your body you might interact with it slightly different to the next person. But it's also going to last you for somewhere between 6 to 12 hours. And immediately that's a whole and those who do go down that route, I mean, it's one of the most common stories or anecdotes that I hear from people from all walks of life is that they thought, well, I heard cannabis might be good medically. Didn't know it was medically legal in the UK, so I went to Amsterdam, which is the sort of nearest legal market where you can do these things completely, free of that legal risk. And but they go to Amsterdam and they have an edible, and they wait because they don't know how long it's going to take, and it takes longer than they expect. So they have another edible, and then they have a terrible experience because they've had two edibles and it lasts for ages, and they're in the middle of Amsterdam with a dose way beyond what they were. Yeah. You say you've done it yourself.
Yeah, at the Bulldog in Amsterdam, right? That was one of my experiences. So that's why I wanted to figure out a way to avoid that, right? That people could trust, and they don't have to, you're not freaking out for multiple hours. People ultimately want an experience, a predictable experience. You don't want something. You don't want something that's just like out of left field and you don't know what's going to happen. It's scary for people. Right. And you're right. A lot of people don't, like, including myself. I mean, I'm not a smoker either. I'll smoke a little bit here and there, but, I really prefer to eat edibles, and having good, solid, trustworthy edibles has broadened this market tremendously.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I hadn't really made these connections and quite worked out. I knew about the brand, I knew about the edibles, I knew about the nanotechnology, I knew roughly what that did in terms of experience, but I hadn't put it to that extent where it's actually about trust and actually about bringing new consumers into this space, the reliability of the experience. I've never heard it framed like that, but that's perfect. I mean, it makes so much sense. And trust is one of the biggest problems that we have, I think. Even in the UK, where it's a medical market, you're speaking to a very qualified doctor. All of this is pharmaceutically regulated, and yet still we have people. I have family members who are just like, no, it's cannabis. And there are people who it's going to help. Like, I know it's going to help this person and whatever issue they have, but they don't trust it. And I think it is because they might have to inhale something. And if not, they're not sure exactly what that is, and they don't trust that experience. But how do you break through, I suppose, in that sense with a brand in that way? I mean, what's been the sort of driving force in terms of reaching those what's the word, the non-cannabis demographics, if you will?
That's a great question, and it's been a battle. And I always tell people it's one consumer at a time. It's literally one consumer at a time, because cannabis has that stigma that's been around for decades and decades, right? That's been plastered into our society by our governments, right? And it's really spoiled it, right? And people are scared of it. But what ended up happening was that the younger in California, I'll just use California as an example. The younger generations were adopting cannabis, right? They were a little more flexible in terms of, okay, I had a bad experience, but they're not, they're okay. They'll go try it again,
Yeah.
right? And once it started getting into the common cannabis culture, kids were were hearing not kids, right? So uh, were talking to their grandparents and then hearing how their grandparents had back pain or they had sleep issues, and they slowly but surely got their other generations and other non-cannabis consumers to try, and because they're proud of it. People, early consumers and people in this industry are proud to talk about it. They're proud to show other people about how a natural plant can be so much better than taking an opiate, right? Can be so much better than smoking tobacco, right? And so that drive has been literally one consumer at a time. And it got to a point, for example, where some brands in California, ours included, we would go into senior living communities and we would give talks about how cannabis can help with pain and anxiety and stress and sleep and all of that. And so the manufacturers have worked hard to kind of let them know that this is actually trustworthy now. You don't have to eat the whole edible. We have a dividing line in our gummies, right, where they can take half if they want, right? And this is what the experience is going to be like. And doctors are talking about it. Early on, we had a doctor from UCLA who was a gerontologist, and she was prescribing our products, our tinctures back in the day, to her elderly patients, and she was having great success. So it's been slow and methodical, but the growth has been happening, and we all need to continue to drive this because it's very important for society to really understand how compelling this plant medicine is compared to pharmaceuticals, and tobacco and other products.
I'm making notes here. Take doctor talks in retirement communities. That's I haven't heard of anybody doing that in UK medical yet. I don't know why not. I'm sure that's something that we can have a think about. So, thanks for the tips.
Yeah.
So I guess you've got, obviously we talk a lot about the edibles. It's one of the big part of the kind of brand of Sunderstorm's work. If it was up to you, would you have launched with those products in a UK medical market rather than launching with flower first, or is it more about getting into the market and getting the brand in the market?
That's a good question. I would love to be in the UK market with edibles as fast as possible. It's what we do really, really well. I think that I think we're the best edible manufacturer in the US. That's what I believe. I think we have the best quality. People have been to our facilities. They tell us how great we are compared to our competitors, and we're very proud of that. We want to put that all over the world. But to be honest, the adoption of these types of products takes time, and you have to start with flower because flower is what the general cannabis consumer, is really familiar with, right? And so you got to have great flower products that are consistent, that are tested, that aren't flooded with pesticides, like I've been saying, right? To get them to feel comfortable and all of that. But you also have to have products for other types of consumers that don't want to smoke, and that broadens the market dramatically, right? And so that's why the second product to really catch on was, there were some edibles back in the day, but tinctures actually took on, are good early product for a lot of markets because you can dose it quite easily, and you can dip your toe, as we like to say, with the tinctures. tinctures are not a big part of the market in California, and happening, for example, and haven't been for many, many years, because those consumers then move from tinctures into gummies and other types of edibles, and they feel much more comfortable with that now. So I think it's kind of a natural evolution. Again, I would love to have the products in the UK, but I do think being in the flower market is important for us to help build our brand. And it's just the nature of where the UK market is today. And it will evolve quickly. I saw the same thing in Thailand.
Yeah.
In Thailand, started with flower, but very quickly it began to evolve into edibles.
Yeah. I think we'll see that if you want to call that. You've talked about cannabis 2.0, 3.0, whatever the next phase is. I think we are fast approaching that here in UK medical. I think we've got to a point where, there's a lot of flower on the market. I'm certainly not complaining about that. I'm very happy to have Thai flower entering the market. I think for the first time, certainly one of the first Thai grown flowers entering the UK market. But I'm also very, very keen to have that wider portfolio of products so we can go and convince my relatives and the other people, the people I've spoken about, and we can have those conversations, because I think you're not going to be able to build that trust if you don't have the options available, I suppose, beyond the inhaled modes. And it
will go quickly, and that evolution will happen quickly. That evolution actually took years in California, but it took less than a year in Thailand, and that evolution is happening very, very quickly in all markets right now. So that's a good.
Yeah. I would really hope we could maybe revisit this conversation a year down the line, and we'd be like, yeah, that didn't take long at all, did it? Would not surprise me. Things do, they move a lot faster than they did in the early days in California, because you didn't have all of the need to be revolutionaries and all of the stigma to unpick.
And we didn't have the trust either. We didn't have the trust.
Of course.
It took us years to build that trust, even within the cannabis community. So, but the world is a different world today than it was 10 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago, right? So, and that's a beautiful thing. And now these products you can trust these products and the brands.
This is it. So we're approaching the end of the episode, but what we like to do at the end of Grow Conversations is a bit of a quick fire round, if that's all right with you, Cameron. We'll do quite a few. We'll see how many we get through. We've got 6 or 7 questions here, but the briefest answer you could possibly give us, 2 or 3 words, maybe a sentence. But yeah, let's try and keep this.
That's been hard for me. I'll do my best.
We've dug into some deep stuff, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes it's nice to see what happens if you add a little bit of pressure right at the end there, and we get a nice round off in terms of I can ask a lot more questions very, very quickly. Basically, it's too much to talk about for just an hour.
For sure. I'm happy to come.
So to start off the quick fire round, what is the most misunderstood thing about cannabis?
I think it's just the stigma. It's just that it's not an all natural. That it's not a natural plant that's good. That has that attaches to the endocannabinoid system and is part of our DNA. Like it's endogenous. Like it connects to us endogenously, and that's a beautiful thing.
Perfect. What's the biggest mistake the cannabis industry, or perhaps some of the players within it, still make?
Taking on too much capital, getting over their skis, and trying to grow too quickly, and not building a good foundation. You have to build a solid foundation. It's about trust with your investors. It's about trust with your consumers.
What country outside North America is most exciting to you right now? I won't be hurt if you don't say the UK. We'll forgive you.
I am very excited about the UK and Germany right now.
Perfectly answered.
But I will tell you that over the long haul, I do think I throw this out there. I think Brazil is going to be interesting down the road.
Interesting. Say no more. That's a lovely little teaser for the future. Has cannabis become too commoditized?
No, I don't think so. Not at all. I mean,
I think it's a long way up. Yeah.
You know what? There's incredible innovation. You know what? There's all kinds of consumers. You have to adapt to different kinds of consumers, and it's just going through its natural evolution of ebb and flow of markets. It's challenging, but these are natural progressions.
All right, one last question for you, Cameron, and appreciate how much time you've given us today. What is one thing you would like the viewers to know about yourself, about Kanha, about Sunderstorm?
The one thing is that we have incredible passion for the plant. nobody comes in this company. We have almost 250 employees, and all of them are very passionate about the plant. And we get up and we fight this fight every single day because we know how many people it's helping around the globe. And that drives us, and it's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Cameron. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and find out all about Kanha, all about Sunderstorm, plans for the UK and the world. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll be back with another episode of Grow Conversations very, very shortly. Thank you, Cameron.